it's Heather, or Miss Titus if you're one of my students that's visiting us here on YouTube. Today we are going to be doing a couple of different types of flowers, specifically things that are like in the daisy family. These flowers are not made from any pictures or anything. I just kind of made them from my head. So I have this example that we are going to show how to do today, and I also have these types of flowers that we are going to do as well. So I hope you guys stick around to learn how to draw these types of flowers and make some art with me. Let's get started. So when I'm first getting started, I like to choose the colors that I'm using. I'm gonna keep with my gold and black theme like I did in my other examples. I specifically use this gold metallic marker from the Dollar Tree that I got, and it's just called Crafter Square, and this is one of the best gold markers I've ever gotten, and it only cost me $1. In some dollar stores it might be $1.25 now, or Dollar Trees. So I like to pick a lighter color, and then I go back over with a black pen. I use these Uniball pens. As you can see, my pen is getting quite worn out. These last a really long time. They are a little bit more expensive, but any black pen will do. So again, you can use whatever colors you want, and again, you can start in pencil if you would like as well. So we are going to be starting with this simpler flower, and then we will kind of take it up a notch with the other type of flower. So the first thing I like to do is the center of the flower, and for this I kind of just start scribbling in like an oval shape and have it a little bit taller in the center. Okay, once I have that, then I'm going to create the shapes of my petals. And one thing that I think that is important to remember when you're drawing your petals is that you do not want it to be perfect. Especially if you want to have a more natural looking flower. If you take a look at these ones, I did them very wavy, not perfect at all. All the shapes are completely different from each other. The one thing that we got to keep in mind is just mainly the direction of our petals. So think about where they're coming out of the oval or the center. Okay, so this one I have a little bit crooked. So I'm going to start off with my middle petal. And like I said, you don't want to have a perfect shape. I go in a little bit skinnier towards the center. Then I get a little bit wider and then go to a point. Then I'm going to start my next one. And this one will be a little bit easier because I don't have to do this side. I just go again down and back up, meeting my petal I just did. And I'm going to come over to this side. And again, I'm wiggling my marker a little bit as I'm going. And then this, as I'm coming out, I'm at a more of an angle. And trying to keep kind of even spacing between these. But again, like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. All right, you have the option to leave it like this if you wanted, or if you wanted to see a little bit more of the petal on the other side peeking through. You're just going to, again, start at this side, but this time you're not gonna go out quite as far. So you do that on the one side and then on the other. And then for these very back petals, you'll just see just a little bit of the curve where it's drooping down. So for my other examples, I did 3 bumps for the petals, but I think for this one, I will just do 2. So I'm just doing a little bit of a bump going in towards the other petals. Okay, so that is the very basic outline. And then after I do it with my lighter color, then I go back over with my black. And again, you guys can use any colors that you want. So first I start at the center, and I use a technique called scumbling. So this is pretty much just controlled scribbling. So I scribble or use a curly line and fill in the whole center. And then I go back and just on the bottom edge of this, I make it a bit darker so that it's lighter up top and then it gets darker towards the edge. And again, we don't want it to be perfect. We want it to be a little bit messy because I feel like it makes it look a bit more natural. Okay, now that I have my outline of my petals, I've done the middle, I'm gonna go over each of the lines that I had with my pen. And I'm just going back and forth, making a bit of a thicker line. Again, for my style, I like a little bit more of a sketchy look. And I'm just doing this on each of the petals. So now that I've gone over each of my lines, and I'm pretty happy with how thick each of the lines are, and again, you can go back in and make them a little thicker after you've added more details. I'm going to start adding texture. So for adding texture, I'm going to just kind of draw some lines that go all the way across the petal, kind of far out, and then I like to draw a couple of shorter lines that are a little bit curved. And then, so it's a lot darker here and it gets lighter. I want to do some like medium length lines that go part of the way, but not quite all the way. So I get almost this gradient effect from dark to light. Once you're happy with that, you can kind of go back in and check over all of them. See if you want to make any lines a bit thicker or fill them in a little bit. But again, I like how it's a little bit messier where there is some gaps so you can see the gold peeking through in the black lines. And again, you don't want to completely cover over your first color if you do decide to use the 2-color method. Of course, you can do this straight with black or pencil. You don't have to do it in pen. Okay, and then the last thing I'm gonna do is just choose a little spot for the stem. And actually, I'm gonna do that in my marker first and go over it just like I did in my example. So I'm gonna go a little at the center. These have a pretty simple stem. Oops, I made that a little thick. That's okay. But I'm gonna wait a second for this to dry. That's another nice thing about these Dollar Tree markers. is that they dry pretty quickly. So I'm just gonna go back over the spot on the edge and go over my stem. And actually, I think I'm gonna go a little bit more on the inside because I made this stem a little bit wider than I would have wanted. Again, I'm just going over this line with a thicker black line. And then I'm going to add lots of lines right underneath the flower to make it darker. And then have lines that go all the way down. I'm going to spread out, again, kind of the lots of lines, medium lines, not as many lines, so kind of making this gradient of dark to light. And I'm also going to do a bit of a gradient on the very bottom as well. So adding lots of lines right at the bottom, medium amount of lines towards the middle, and then spreading them out so it's the lightest in the middle. Again, I did make that stem a little bit wider than I wanted to, but here is my finished example with 3. All right, guys, I did take a little break to rest up my hands. I did go a little bit faster than I usually do when I was drawing this one, so that it's easier for you guys to watch, and I will be editing this too, so you guys won't have to sit out the whole entire thing. But for the next one we are going to be doing is our flower like this. And I'm just calling these daisies, but they're not really one specific type of flower, like I said, that I looked at. So let's get started on the second style. So for this second style, I'm going to do kind of similar to what I started to do here for the center, except I'm just going to do kind of a bumpy circle rather than an oval shape. Again, I'm starting off with my lighter color, so if you decide to use the 2-color method, you can start either with whatever color you use, or you can just go straight into the black. And then once I have my bumpy shape, I'm going to do some small petals going all the way around, kind of like lowercase n's. So this first layer is pretty small. And then for my second layer of petals, I'm going to start at the top of one of my previous layer. I'm going to make it a little bit taller than I did for these. So a little bit bigger as we're going around to the next layer. If you want, you could do actually another layer or two of these types of petals if you're keeping them pretty small, but I am going to move on to my bigger layer. So just like I did with this layer, starting at the peak or the top of the layer before it, I'm going to start at the top of this petal and go out, decide how long I want these petals to be, and then I am going to keep going around. I'm leaving a bit of a gap in between, so I'm not having them right on top of each other. And I'm trying to keep them all about the same length, about the same width. That one's a little bit short. So what I'm going to do with my lighter color is I'm just gonna go and make that line a little bit thicker, make it a little bit taller, because we are going to be going over this with the pen, the black. All right, now that I have this layer, I'm going to go in between each of these gaps and do a little connecting petal. So again, just start, these ones are a little close together, so I'm going to just do something small. So with mine, since I didn't turn my paper like I usually do, my petals ended up a little bit more uneven than I would have liked. But when we go in and add this texture, we can kind of adjust that where we need to. So now that I've done it in there, I'm going to switch to my black. And this one is more of a top view, so I'm not actually going to do a stem, but if you would like, I would just do a stem similar to this one. So just like I did for the center here, I'm going to be using that technique for scumbling. So going around the edge and then going in the middle. I think I'm going to make the edge a little bit darker of the circle and a little bit lighter towards the middle. So again, scumbling is just controlled scribbling. I use a curly line and kind of go in circular motions. Right, then I'm going to go over all of my lines. I'm going to go over them a couple of lines to make my black line a bit thicker. Okay, so I went over all of those, and now I'm going to go over the bigger petals. Again, if I need to make any like major adjustments to the size or direction, I can at least nudge it. I can't completely fix it, but I can maybe nudge it, make it the black line a little bit shorter, a little bit taller. So I'm just gonna turn my paper a bit to help. A nice thing about these flowers is there's not really any top or bottom. So turning doesn't really change how you're viewing it. It just makes it a little bit easier to draw. Okay, so now that we have all of our lines covered, I'm going to go in and add my texture. So it's going to be very similar to what I did here. I like to add more lines towards the center, and then as I'm going towards the edges of the flower, I'm adding less lines, make them a little bit farther apart. And again, you can play around with this to see exactly what you like. Again, more lines towards the center and less lines towards the edge. You do have to be careful not to go past your line, but if you do accidentally, you can just go in and make that top line a bit thicker. There we have our two different types of flowers. And again, I like to combine these in different ways. So for this one, I did quite a few of this one type of flower. I like to make them a little bit more dynamic by placing them on the edge and then running into the side. That way it looks like the picture is kind of going off the page. But then I also have these leaves that I added in, just very simple leaves, where I'm just doing pretty much a point with a line in the middle and then doing the kind of V shape. And again, with that double layered technique of doing the gold and then the black on top. And then I like to go in and add some polka dots or some very simple shapes to just fill in the gaps so it doesn't look really empty in those spaces. So I kind of filled in with some bigger dots and some smaller dots. So a lot of my artwork has a lot of repetition. Sorry, I don't know how to talk today. Has a lot of repetition, and this creates like a new pattern using the flowers. For this one, I kept it pretty simple. I might go back in and add some more to it, but I just layered the flowers kind of on top of each other. Another thing that you can do is kind of have them going in at different directions rather than having them all in the same like bundle, to make it a little bit more dynamic or interesting to look at. So, all right guys, that is how you draw two different types of flowers that are kind of based off of daisies. Again, there's a lot of different varieties of daisies, so this is not one specific type. This is kind of just an imaginary version of two daisies that I kind of came up with. So I hope you guys enjoy trying these out for yourself and work on creating some different patterns or designs. You can also color these in with like a watercolor wash, where you add lots and lots and lots of water with just a little bit of color to fill these in, if you decide to just use black rather than the two color method that I used. All right guys, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, week, month, etc., year, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.